ReefBum is sponsored by Bulk Reef Supply and Ecotech Marine. Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video. So in this video I want to do a complete walkthrough of both of my systems, but before I do that, if you want to help support the channel and pick up some SPS frags, you can do so at reefbum.com. And with that, let's get into the video. Alright, so here's a shot of my two display tanks in my finished basement here, and in the room in between, that houses my frag tanks as well as all the equipment. So let's start with the 187 gallon display tank. This is part of a system that is 446 gallons in total. It includes this display tank, the 75 gallon frag tank, as well as a 50 gallon frag tank, 74 gallon sump, and a 60 gallon cryptic sump. So all of my glass aquariums are custom made by Coast to Coast Custom Aquariums. This one measures 5 foot long by 30 inches wide by 24 inches tall. It has a external overflow box. I love the external overflow boxes. They're just really, I think, very practical. It's great because, you know, there's no weird corners in the aquarium. It's nice and flush. So it also gives you a lot more space for corals, which is great. So I always have external overflows on my tanks. In terms of the lighting, I just about 3 months ago installed these GHL Mitras, the LEDs. Swapped out my halides and T5s for these fixtures. Really digging these LEDs at this point. For circulation, I've got 4 MP40s, the Ecotech MP40s, and they're all set at this point on the pulse mode, pretty much all at 100%. Plumbing wise, well, let me first go behind the stand on this tank. You'll see that there really is not much at all in terms of equipment underneath. I've got the ballast for the light fixtures, and that's pretty much it. I've got the controllers for the MP40s mounted to this little wooden table, jury rig table. And yeah, so plumbing wise, I've got all this Schedule 80 plumbing. I've got 2 1.5 inch drains, and I've got 2 1-inch returns. So this was a complicated plumbing project. What I really wanted to do was I wanted to have my sump in a remote location, which is in that room next door. So I had to plumb all this stuff through the wall, and man, that was not easy. I'll go around to the other side so you can kind of see where it goes through the wall here. I've got this little lobster pot buoy blocking it, but so yeah, I just drilled holes in the drywall and went right through the wall there. So now we'll kind of take a walk into the other room. So that those PVC pipes go underneath these stairs. I'll open up this door. Kind of hard to see from this angle here, but I'm trying to show you folks a perspective. I'll move over on this side here so you can kind of see the more of the plumbing that's coming through the wall underneath the stairs. I've got some unions that are connecting all the plumbing. So these are the drains right here and right through here that are going into this Royal Exclusiv Dreambox. As I mentioned, it's a 74 gallon sump. So let me point out the frag tanks before I get more into the equipment. This is the 50 gallon frag tank. Again, it's got an external overflow box. I've got fans on top of both of these frag tanks. This right here is a chiller that I installed years ago, and it's just not in a good place because, as you can see, the exhaust comes right out, almost hits this drum right here in this tank. But there's really not much in terms of circulation in this room, so it heats up the room when that chiller comes on. So these fans really do a great job of preempting the the chiller turning on, which is a great thing. So that chiller really does not operate too often. So all right, getting back to the frag tanks. What I've got one NP40 in this frag tank, and this frag tank is getting fed by one of the two 100-watt Royal Exclusiv Red Dragon pumps that I have in this sump. So I've got a series of T's that are going on right here. So it's running through a couple of different ways. It's going back up and around right here for this 50-gallon frag tank. This 1-inch plumbing. So this is the return line that is right there. And then this is the drain for this frag tank. So this drain is going into this very complicated looking piece of plumbing. So for this Dreambox, I've got 5 different inlets. So 2 of the inlets right here and here are for the display tank. This particular inlet right here is for the 50-gallon frag tank. Now the 75-gallon frag tank, and this 50-gallon frag tank is a 4 foot long by 2 foot wide by 12 inches tall. Actually, yes, it is 12 inches. Let me get out the ruler to confirm that. No, 10 inches. I am wrong. I can never remember. This one's 10 inches. This one's 12 inches. All right. So this 75-gallon frag tank is 6 foot long. Nope, it's 5 foot long. Man, I'm getting my dimensions all screwed up. This is 5 foot long by 12 inches high by 24 inches wide. All right, sorry about that. I'm going to get my act straightened out here. So this 50-gallon frag tank is lit by 2 Reef Brite halide hybrid lights. So I've got 400-watt 20K radium bulbs in each of these fixtures, and then the XHO light strips are accenting the halide bulbs. For this tank, I've got 2 of these old school Luminarc reflectors, and inside of these reflectors I've got 400-watt 20K bulbs, the radium bulbs. So I'm using radium bulbs for all the halide bulbs that I got going on these frag tanks. So in this particular frag tank, I've got 2 MP40s, one right here and one in the back corner that you probably can't see. So the drain for here is underneath this external overflow box, and it is running behind all this tubing right here, and it's going in to that inlet in the Dreambox. And the return is coming teed out from one of the other 100-watt Royal Exclusiv Red Dragon pumps. And again, that one is actually more on a wild ride. It is going right, where is it going? It's going underneath right here, behind here, going up along this wall, up along this ceiling right here. And I've got some valves that you can see right here. Those are part of my water change system, and I'll explain that in a minute. But that return is coming in right through here. So those are the 2 frag tanks that are plumbed in to the sump along with the display tank. What else can I tell you? So I mentioned water changes. So when I do water changes, large water changes on this system, I'll shut everything down, and I've got a series of valves that I use, and I've got a whole video that I can put in the video description below on how I do water changes. But there's a valve back here that I would turn, so when everything is shut down, I'll turn that valve, and that'll redirect the instead of redirecting the water up back to the return line for the main display, it will redirect it to the frag tank. So when I do the water changes, I will turn these 2 valves the opposite way, and instead of the water going down into the return, it will go along this piece of plumbing into this vinyl tubing, which I put into the slop sink. This is my 50-gallon drum of pre-made salt water. I've got a couple of valves in here. So right now, the way the valves are turned, it is circulating the water inside of this 50-gallon drum. When I want to do a water change, all I do is I turn the valves the opposite way, and it will shoot the water via this 3/4 inch PVC underneath this bench. Comes out around here, right, and it'll go into the sump that way. So it's a pretty neat system I have set up for water changes. And when I want to do water changes for the other system, all I got to do is turn these two valves, which will shoot the water up that PVC pipe around down into this sump. But I can show you that in a minute. So it's a it looks complicated, but it's actually a pretty simple setup in terms of doing water changes. I've been doing PVC plumbing for a long time, so I've learned a lot of tricks along the way, and it's not easy, and I would recommend probably using, if you're not that adept in terms of cement, using cement and PVC pipe and all that stuff, to use more flexible tubing than I have. I like to hard plumb everything, because once I get through that tough part of hard plumbing it, then it's really something I don't have to worry about for a very, very, very long time versus the vinyl tubing. But the vinyl tubing is perfectly fine in many, many applications. So you don't have to be as nuts as myself to hard plumb everything. So in terms of what else is going on equipment wise, I've got this Royal Exclusiv Bubble King 180 double cone skimmer, which does a great job. I've got filter socks going on right here. So I've got a bunch of filter socks, 3, 6, 10 filter socks for this dream box right here. And I'll have to, I wash the filter socks out once a week with a hose, rinse them with a hose. And the finer filter socks right here, I'll do those twice a week, because they'll get clogged up if I don't. What else do I got going on here? Activated carbon right there. I've got a bunch of feed pumps in here. This particular one right here will feed the UV sterilizer. I've got another pump. UV sterilizer is right over here. Currently I'm not running the UV sterilizer. This is a bit of an experiment on my part, so I want to see what happens. It's been a few weeks since I haven't running the UV sterilizer, and I know that there are advantages and disadvantages of running a UV sterilizer. The microbiome is going to be more diverse without it, but there are some advantages in terms of running that UV, like the potential prevention of some fish disease, as well as preventing the outbreak of dinos. But I don't know, I'm just trying to simplify things a little bit here. I mentioned the cryptic sump. This is the 60-gallon cryptic sump. It's a black polyurethane cube. I think it measures 2 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet. I've got about 100 pounds of the Haitian lab rock that I used to have in my 187-gallon display tank in here. It's just set up with a simple drain return line, and this is an emergency overflow in case there is a clog someplace. So that's kind of like a set it and forget it type of deal. This is my calcium reactor. This is a Reef Octopus 9-inch single chamber calcium reactor. It does a great job keeping up with the demands of the calcium and alkalinity. But really the majority of my calcium and alkalinity supplementation is via dosing Kalkwasser, which I have in this 30-gallon drum. I go through, I think it's about 2 gallons of Kalkwasser a day on this system. So what what I do is I add Kalkwasser to this drum when it gets near to be empty, and then I will add the RODI water, so that mixes it up. I do not do any mixing while it's sitting in that vat for the 2 weeks that I'm dosing it. I use this GHL Maxi 2.2 doser. I did a whole video. Well, I got a video coming out on this Maxi doser. No, I did a video on it. I can't remember which end is up these days. So yeah, I did a video on this thing, the new doser, and that is what I'm using to draw. It's drawing all the way through over that doorway from this bin and dosing into the sump. So the majority of my calcium and alkalinity supplementation is via the Kalk dosing, and my pH is elevated in this system. You know, right now it's at 8.4. It's going to get up to 8.5 probably by the end of the day. The low is like 8.2. So really very elevated pH on this system. I've got an auto top-off device. This is the SpectraPure, called the Ultra Device Level Controller. It basically has a sensor in the sump, and so whenever the water gets below a certain level, it will come from this 50-gallon drum that has the RODI water. This is my SpectraPure RODI 4-stage RODI unit, and this is what I also use. I have a pump in this 50-gallon drum that pumps the RODI, the fresh water, into this saltwater mixing bin. So whenever I need to mix up some new salt water, I will do that when I run that pump from that drum to this drum. So in terms of, and I also use a series of valves on the RODI freshwater drum to send water all the way over to this drum. I could probably do an hour video in terms of all my plumbing and what have you, but that I don't want to carry any buckets. I don't want to do like a bucket brigade. So that's how I refill that drum, is from that drum via the pump and a bunch of valves that I turn. So what else can I tell you about the system? I use the Captivate Aquaculture trace elements. I do monthly ICP tests to adjust my trace element dosing. I also on occasion will dose bacteria, and what else can I tell you? Controller wise, I've got the Profilux 4 controller, and this is the doser 2.1, so I'm dosing certain things. This is what I'm using this dosing can as I'm dosing my my trace elements, and I've got the trace elements all mixed up in one 1-gallon jug. So I can't remember off the top of my head how many different trace elements that I'm dosing, but I've got a trace element cocktail that I mix up every month. A few days after I get my ICP test results back, I make the adjustments and I put the traces in in RODI water, so they're all being dosed at the same time in that cocktail. I also dose sometimes nitrates. I dose a lot of phosphates. What else do I dose? That's kind of about it in terms of dosing. I've got this set up with some ESV alkalinity, the alkalinity from the 2-part, and that's if I'm away and I need to really bump up my alkalinity if it's low. I think it's a great kind of fail-safe in terms of having this. So if I'm away and I can't make adjustments to the calcium reactor, I've got a pH probe in this calcium reactor. So that's the primary way that I make adjustments to bump up or bump down the alkalinity in my system. But if it's too low and it's just not cranking out enough of the to supplement the alkalinity, then I could always boost it really quickly with that. So I think that's a nice backup to have, especially when I'm away. It's great. I also have 2 heaters on this system. I like redundancy, so I'm using the 2 heaters. This is the pump that I'm using for the calcium reactor, so that is drawing the effluent from the top of the reactor and feeding it into this Dreambox. I am basically dripping the Aquas or the calcium reactor effluent into the right in front of the skimmer pump. So that kind of helps to degas the CO2 because there's a lot of air exchange going on inside of that that skimmer. So I do that, and yeah, that's about it, I think, for the 446 gallon system. Oh, one last thing I forgot to mention. I monitor my alkalinity with this KH director, and I don't use it to control, I just use it to monitor. So that's the other big thing. And the other thing I want to mention is that I've got a series of different webcams. I think these are all Google Nest cams. That's one. That's another. Where's the other one? There's another one right here. That's another Nest cam right here. So, you know, when I'm away, again, remotely, I can look at all my frag tanks and my sumps. So it's, plus, you know, I've got a live webcam on the display tank out there. I've got eyes on everything, which I think is very important, especially when I'm away, and I highly recommend it. Another thing I want to mention that I have that was installed a few years ago is this air exchange unit. And since I am in a finished basement in Vermont, when the windows get shut tight, there is not a lot of air that is circulating from the outside to the inside. So after this was installed, my pH increased by about 0.2 pH points for both of my systems, which is really significant. You know, I have I got some of these utility windows down here in the basement, and you know, right now they're open because of the summertime, and I've got some of these I've got windows that are also open in the summertime. So I don't run the air exchange unit when you know, it starts to get warm in the springtime, but in the summer and what have you, in the fall, when it's not chilly out, I've got the windows cracked open, so the CO2 is not an issue in terms of accumulating inside. So yeah, the air exchange unit is certainly an important part in terms of keeping that pH elevated. All right, so now let's talk about the 225 gallon Peninsula tank, which is part of a 349 gallon system, which includes a 50 gallon Frag tank as well as a 74 gallon sump. So this particular tank is 6 foot long by 3 foot wide by 20 inches tall. I'm really digging the 20-inch tall tank. It seems to have created a lot of tabling acros, which I love the look of the tabling acro. But I don't know. The other thing is aquascaping. I used you know, 2 layers of rock, KP Aquatics live rock in this tank, and I should mention that the live rock in the other tank is about 100 pounds of the Carib Sea life rock, which I cooked for a while and certainly went through an ugly stage. But all right, getting back to this live rock right here from KP Aquatics, and it's only like 2 layers of rock, so I didn't have to do any epoxying or puttying, and I think the lower height of the aquarium definitely was an advantage for me in terms of that. But I like the look. I really do like the look of the 20-inch tall tank. So this tank also has the GHL Mitras. I've got 6 of those fixtures. In terms of circulation, I've got 4 MP40s, 2 on this end, 2 on that end, and I've got 2 MP60s. This tank, as well as the other display tank, and all of my tanks are now, this tank I started bare bottom. I just really felt I didn't have much of a choice to put a sand bed in a Peninsula tank that was going to be SPS dominant, that had was going to have a lot of flow in it. You know, I guess I could have figured out a way to use more coarser type of sand, but I never had a sand a bare bottom tank before. I like it. I like it a lot. It's a lot easier to maintain, the pull, you know, siphon out the detritus on the bottom. So it's working really well for me in terms of the bare bottom of this tank. This tank also has an external overflow box. It's got the 2 1 1/2 inch drains behind here, and it's got the 2 1-inch return lines, and this is also plumbed through the wall. And this was a little bit more complicated because I had to go through a couple of rooms. Going back to the work room right here, and as you can see, this is where it goes through the wall right next to my furnace. So it's going through the wall here, 90-degree angle, and now it's going back through the wall here. So I'll go back to the other side, and let me tell you, each of these plumbing projects, setting up these two different systems, and that's what I have. I got two different systems. It took me about a week to plumb. So yeah, it was a lot of work here. This is the switch system that I got set up for this particular system. These are all different individual switches for individual outlets. It's the exact same type of setup that I have in my other system. These are all GFCIs. So I had those installed, I don't know, 6 to 8 months ago. I like it a lot. These are audible GFCIs, so if any of these circuits trip, it will make a beeping sound, and that green light right there will not be on. So it's pretty easy to reset if that happens. Anyway, so basically the plumbing, as I mentioned, goes through the wall, and right over here you can see these are the two drain lines right there. The other drain right here is from this 50-gallon frag tank. So the same dimensions of the other 50-gallon frag tank. Again, a coast-to-coast custom aquariums frag tank that measures 4 foot long by 10 inches high by 24 inches wide. This tank, like all of my coast-to-coast custom aquarium tanks, I forgot to mention this, has Euro bracing. I love the Euro brace. Because it's very it comes in very handy. It prevents, you know, the water from splashing over the edge. You could rest things on top of it. I don't know, I love Euro braced tanks. So and all the frag tanks are also Starfire frag tanks. This one has the external overflow box. We've got the fan on top, running the GHL Mitras on this frag tank. So equipment wise, it's pretty similar to what I got going on this system. I've got a little larger skimmer because I have well, I had more fish in this system before. I lost a few of my yellow pyramid butterfly fish, which is a bummer. Lost a couple other fish too over the last couple of years. So I don't know, but this is a Royal Exclusive Bubble King 200 double cone skimmer. This is the exact same Dreambox as this one. It's a 74-gallon Dreambox, so it's got the 10 filter socks. Also got the activated carbon. A UV sterilizer is plumbed in, but as I mentioned before, I'm doing an experiment and not running it right now, but it is plumbed in. The calcium reactor is also a Reef Octopus calcium reactor. This one is a dual chamber calcium reactor. A dual chamber calcium reactor, you know, the one advantage is that you're supposed to get a little bit more elevated pH, because in the second chamber the CO2 will have more of an opportunity to get degassed off in the second chamber. I don't notice a big difference in terms of the pH between the dual chamber and the single chamber. Maintenance wise, I like the single chamber better, so if I had to do it over again, I might get the single chamber, but that's neither here nor there. It's a great calcium reactor. I don't think you can go wrong with that. I also have the Kamor peristaltic dosing pump that's pulling the effluent from that calcium reactor, and it's dripping it towards the inlet of the skimmer pump. I never have issues with my skimmer pumps seizing up because of the effluent that's dripping into them. I do maintenance every 3 months on all of my pumps, skimmer pumps, return pumps, what have you. So I've never had any issues with the impeller freezing up on my pumps. Those are the controllers for the skimmer and the 2 return pumps. And that's what I got going on right here. The 2 controllers for the return pumps. So what else is different about this system? I use Kalk washer on this as well. So this, again, I had to get creative. I'm limited on space. Now I'm running out of space, so this is my 30-gallon Kalkwasser drum that I pull from for the Peninsula tank system, the 340-gallon, 49-gallon system. So I had to get creative and go through the wall with that as well. It's getting fed with RODI water whenever I put in new Kalkwasser again with this drum. So I'm just doing some, basically I'm just putting these valves in the opposite direction, and that's going to pump the Kalkwasser into the into that reservoir. So yeah, and I'm doing the exact same thing with this GHL Maxi 2.2 doser. This one single unit is dosing Kalkwasser to both of my systems, so it's great. And I'm dosing about 2 gallons of Kalkwasser to the 225-gallon Peninsula tank system, just like I am with the other system. So this has been rock solid for the few months that I've had it, and I'm dosing similar things for this system. Nitrates, not a lot. Phosphates, I'm dosing a lot of that. Probably 30 to 35 mLs of the Brightwell's Neophos. I'm doing the Captivate Aquaculture trace elements. So this is my cocktail for trace elements right here. The KH Director is what I'm using for monitoring purposes. I also dose bacteria on occasion, so to help keep the nutrient control in check. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention on this system, you might notice I've got a Clearwater's algae scrubber. That has not been on recently because my phosphates have pretty much bottomed out. My nitrates are like around 10, and that's the case for both of my systems in terms of my my nutrients. My nitrates run about between 5 and 10 parts per million, and my phosphates are near 0, which is you know, I think the corals are doing the lion's share of the work in terms of pulling out the nutrients, because you can see I got a lot of corals. So yeah, and you know, this system, like the other system, I've got 2 heaters going on. These are the I got Finex heaters, and these are the Finex controllers. 2 of these. You know, again, redundancy is good. I've got some leak sensors scattered about for both systems that are tied into the Profilux 4 controller. This system is also run off of the Profilux 4 controller. I don't have a lot of bells and whistles in terms of the P4. I just don't have a lot of things hooked up to it. But I do like to have the water leakage sensors. They've been tripping a lot lately because there's a lot of humidity in the air, and so you know, I just have to be aware of all that stuff. But that's not out of the ordinary, and you know, so it's not a big deal. But yeah, so that's kind of like what I have set up in terms of alerts, and yeah, that's kind of like about it. Like I said before, my systems, I like to say that I run pretty simple systems. They look complicated, but you know, by and large, there's not a lot of moving parts. There's I try to make things as easy as possible in terms of maintenance, in terms of the water changes, like I talked about. I do about 5% weekly water changes in each system. So I use the Captivate Aquaculture salt. I use the Captivate Aquaculture Kalkwasser on top of their trace elements. So yeah, all good. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video. And if you have any comments or questions, please drop them in the comments below. And if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Until next time, be safe and be well. Later.